We live in an era where electric mobility, energy transition, and batteries are the subject of news media and the focus of companies worldwide. There are more and more jobs opening up in the battery field. One of them is battery analyst. Hans-Erik Melin started his career in communication sciences, and this is how I met him actually. But he has spent the second half of his career specializing in battery analysis. Hans-Erik, the mic is yours.
Yeah, my name is Hans-Erik Melin. I work as an analyst in the life cycle of batteries, in particular in lithium-ion batteries. So I guess you can call me a battery analyst. I run a company where we collect and analyze data on the life cycle of lithium-ion batteries and in all those applications that use batteries power.
And you've done this for how long?
So I started Circle Energy Storage, which is a company I'm heading about 5 years ago in London. Mm-hmm. And I've been in the business, in the actual battery industry, and in particular, in fact, in the end of life side of batteries for around 15 years in different kind of roles. But the actual the analyst role is something I had for 5 years.
Okay. And of course, I mean, it's a very relevant job because it's the era of electric and everybody talks about batteries and what's going to be the future of it and mobility in particular. Does your job span beyond mobility? And if so, what would be like your typical day of work as an analyst?
Yeah, so as I said, we focus on the whole life cycle of lithium-ion batteries. In the future, we might look into other kind of batteries as well. Maybe we go beyond batteries as well. We definitely go already beyond mobility, because our core is really on the end of life side. That is how we started. Where we were really interested in looking at how do people and businesses reuse batteries, and even more, how are they recycled, and how does these recycled materials goes back into the value chain. But by doing that, you have to understand really the full life cycle. And also from those aspects, we don't only look at mobility. I mean, today, light and heavy electric vehicles are very important. I mean, it's really what is driving the whole lithium-ion battery industry. But that has only been the case for about 5 years. And the battery has been in the market for 30 years, and it's mainly been portable electronics that's been driving and also enabling the development that we see today in mobility. So we have to keep track of everything from how people are using their mobile phones and laptops to how we are using these batteries to back up the data centers or to telecom towers, forklifts, and whatever. But obviously, so much is really connected to different kind of mobility solutions today. So of course we are there.
And for the young people listening, this is very intriguing because, of course, everybody has got his own path in life. And both you and I started from the same start, which is communications and PR. This is actually how we met, during the university years. Yeah. So between, becoming a PR and communicator, what brought you to be interested in batteries, and how was this development in your life? How did it happen?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly some, just coincidences that brought me there. But there is, in fact, also a line that kind of connects the dots in my life, bringing me back to my education for sure. And yeah, I mean, so I majored in media and communication, and also had sociology and business administration many years ago. What is it now? I don't care to remember, but like 25 years ago. And I started out in communication. I was heading investor relations in a larger investment company. I started and ran a mid-sized public relations consultancy for like 5 years. But that is also where I was really interested in, not least in new technologies, in very much around the environmental part of it as well. And I really got back to the fundamental in communication, because to me what I was really thrilled about in communication science was how everything that connects to diffusion of innovations, about how opinion leaders take us to spread the word more than what the media is, and a lot of those basic theory around communication. And I got really interested in how new behavior is, or I mean, how you should work if you want to change people's behavior, because that also connects a lot to how technology is adopted. So after I was running this PR agency, I really went back and I started to study, not at the university, but privately, basically, reading up everything I've been doing before and much more than that, to really get deep into diffusion of innovation and everything relating to that. And this was in the early 2000s also, when climate change became very important, and also other environmental aspects. So I saw really the environmental area as something where, I mean, this is where behavioral change is needed, and also where new technology is needed. So I started to work in different kind of areas, in alternative fuels like biofuel and biogas cars. I was working with solar and also with batteries already in the early 2000s. And I was also working a lot with recycling. And that started to give me that kind of profile. And although I was out doing other stuff, I ran a social media company for a while. Then I got back and became CEO for a company that made sorting equipment for batteries. So we use artificial intelligence to sort thousands of different kind of batteries, for waste batteries. So you could recycle them after you've been sorting them in different kind of chemistries. And that was really the start, and took me out in the world and learned everything about battery recycling, but also gave me a lot of knowledge about how batteries are used. And I was very curious about all those batteries that are recycled. What about those that we are not recycling? Where are those? Why are they not ending up here and there? And eventually, that ended up to where I am today. So I really have my education to thank to being where I am today.
Yeah, so your education really led you to what you're doing now. And when you say that you were working with biofuels and alternatives, renewable sources, what does it mean? Like, what were you doing exactly when I believe you were already an entrepreneur, right? Like, you had your own company.
Well, usually I was hired as a consultant in these technology marketing and behavioral change aspects. So I was working for both other startups and for governments. It could be anything from writing long, sometimes quite boring reports, but also working very tightly with these companies. And it was really about, how do you take something that is very small, that people can't really relate to that behavior, like driving cars with new kinds of fuels, or how do you make them invest in wood pellets, or in solar heating or solar cells, because you don't need solar cells on your roof to get electricity, because all of us are already connected to the grid. So how do you actually do that? Is it economic or social incentives needed for this? So and this really connected well to what I've become quite knowledgeable in. And batteries is quite the same. I mean, then I always I've been fascinated about batteries as such. I think it's such a cool product that can move energy in time and place, which enables so much, really. So I'm childishly interested in batteries as a concept and everything it enables. I mean, batteries in themselves are, I mean, super boring. I mean, we don't need batteries usually. It's only in residential or in any kinds of stationary energy storage. But otherwise, what we need is a car, it's a mobile phone, or, as in your case, a plane.
Yeah.
But we don't need the battery. It's just an enabler. But that also takes me out in that world, and to become acquainted with all those different kind of applications, the power, which is really cool. So yeah, so I'm really interested in that as well.
If you could choose your most favorite mandate, what would it be? Like, what would you love to to report on or to advise on for a client today?
How do you mean in terms of?
In terms of like, okay, you gotta as a consultant, you're hired, and you need to, like, what kind of consulting would you be liking to give to a company? It's about batteries. Like, is it the way that they can be recycled, or is it of the life cycle?
Right.
What is it that you would be?
Well, I think it's really interesting because the reason why I've actually become quite successful in the area, I think is, a few years ago when I started this consultancy, I mainly focused on the recycling of batteries, and I honestly just asked myself whether that will cover a half-time consultancy, because how important could this be? And since then, recycling, reuse, and the whole circular economy around batteries has become so huge, really. So
yeah,
of course, I'm very happy for that. But I also think that the general industry and not even policymakers understand what circular economy is, and how we really should look at this from a sustainability point. Because circular economy starts really with manufacturing, and also with ideas that we should actually use as little resources as possible. So if I look at what I really would like to advise, and this is where I'm already advising both governments and businesses, is really how can we use less batteries? We have a situation, not least in the West, where we are not leading in this. We are not leading the field. We basically outsourced this to Asia 20 years ago. And now everybody are determined that we should get back in the game. But I think it will be very, very difficult because they are just so good at this in China, South Korea, and other countries, right? So I think we should just look at how can we use less batteries, because that would also make us less dependent. It makes us less dependent on other countries, but it also makes us less dependent on critical materials, and also means that we don't need to dig up as much material from the ground as we otherwise would. We need to dig up a lot already. So.
And what is the consequence of using less battery?
I think we should look at how can we use smaller batteries and instead use fast charging or abundant charging infrastructure, opportunity charging, or battery swapping, or other. Everything that really, what we really need to see is innovation in how we can not only change how we go from a fossil fuel-driven vehicle, but how can we use less vehicles? How can we use smaller vehicles? How can we make better use of those poor lithium atoms that are in these batteries? That is still an area where the West could actually have a contribution. But the funny thing, or maybe not that funny, but the interesting thing is that even there, I think China is in the lead in looking in these kind of alternative ways of looking at. But that is really an area, I think, where we need to look much, much more, and not only, like in the US right now, build cars that basically every battery in those cars could power 4 normal sized electric vehicles if you just thought about it differently.
Do you think that you being a consultant, like, is there a job position that in the future could become an actual position within companies to be a battery expert, battery analyst, and circular economy expert?
Yeah, I think, it's so funny really when I'm quite often referred to as being a battery expert, and I'm not really a battery expert. I know and I understand that I know much more about battery than the general audience, of course. So, if I'm at the dinner party, I think it makes sense that I can tell somebody about how batteries, right? But I think an interesting aspect is really that you can look at an area from so many different kind of perspectives, and all of those perspectives are needed. I was really almost ashamed of telling about my background. Having a degree in communications, and here I'm talking about, ions and atoms,
technical
and
stuff.
ampere hours and kilowatt hours, what have you, right? It is equally ridiculous when you have a chemist or a physicist looking at people's behavior and try to understand the trade of these batteries, all these applications. But that is also what we are having. I mean, in research, we have a lot of people with really deep technical backgrounds that are basically cheating in areas which they don't know very much about. But they know the need of looking at those areas. I mean, if you are a chemist, you know, and you might be interested in how these are recycled, these batteries, and then it makes sense for you to address those issues. But if you try to understand what really brings the batteries back into the value chain, why are they there, where will they end up, it's not chemical questions. And I think that relates really to, I mean, yes, I think there are already a lot of analysts and experts within companies, both, in big consultants companies or in the actual OEMs or in battery companies, of course. But yeah, I think there is a huge need to really look at change from various or different kind of perspectives. Then in which form and in what kind of role you have. I mean, a problem of only being an analyst is also that you're theorizing around something, right? I think it's important that people have actually real experience from being in the actual industries as well. It's like, I don't think academics are, unless it's very technical issues, but otherwise it's in social science. I think you have to get out there. You have to get out and not necessarily get your hands dirty, but learn for yourself and see the problems that arise and be curious. And then you can become a good analyst, I think.
You know, coming from a more humanistic background and jumping into a very technical one, what difficulties did you perceive?
Yeah, I I think I actually don't know them. I think there are many, but that people, I think many times people just might have going out from a meeting with me and said, that guy doesn't know anything. Right?
Oh, yeah?
And I mean, I've learned so much, and I would be just too embarrassed to talk about how little I knew like 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 1 year ago for that matter. I mean, I think that's really important. You have to be a learner. You have to be curious. You have to also risk, in a sense, to act like a fool. Because if you only stay in your own domain all the time, I mean, things in this industry go so fast, really. So you have to be curious about other industries. You have to be curious about what is really driving the industry where you are yourself. And then you can't be, I mean, very knowledgeable about that. I mean, it's taken me a long time really to understand chemistry because, I mean, it helped to have a son, which I helped in a way, or he helped me maybe doing his schoolwork. And I think that was brilliant. But there's been other technical details which I just didn't know so much about. And so people might absolutely say that, he doesn't know this. But you know what? I think a few months later, I did know that. I learned. So I think that's what's really important.
So the persistence and then determination and also being curious, so that it allows you to keep learning about it. And any myth about your job?
I don't know really around. I mean, when it comes to analysis as such, I don't know whether that is an actual myth, because I think it's quite rightly perceived sometimes for just people with no experience, no background, doing a lot of analysis and looking into their Excel sheets and not really what's going out there. But the interesting thing is I think both are needed. I mean, because when you're really in the actual industry, you see very much your own business. You see your competitors, but sometimes it's just hard to see it from the more helicopter view, in a sense. I often think about this because as I've actually been running startups and businesses in the industry, And then I came back as an analyst. And I wouldn't mind to be in the business or in the actual industry again. But I see it a little bit like when you're surfing, even when you're wave surfing. I mean, when you sit at the beach, you're analyzing the waves, and you're looking, okay, there is where I will go out, there is where I will catch the big waves, and you have a perfect view of that. And then you go out in the water, and you see like nothing. You basically only see the wave in front of you and the one behind you. That's the only kind of vision you have at that point. So I think you need both, but rightly so. I think there are definitely a lot of analysts out there that they just rely on secondary information. They don't talk to the actual industry. They sneak peek on other analysts, and then we are getting nowhere because then others are relying on information that might not be true. I think that's the so maybe not so much of a myth, but something I
Not
think
so
there
much
is a
of a
risk.
myth.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does someone who has not had previous companies or has not been interacting with that industry start a job in this industry? Because you of course you said that you were already involved in the industry from different angles and perspectives, and then you got into the battery technology later. Can someone like aspire for an internship, or what kind of companies should they be looking at to gain the first experience?
The opportunities are, I mean, there are several opportunities, and I mean, there are so many parts of this work where you have to do a lot, almost mechanical work. I mean, just harvest, like what we are doing. I mean, we harvest prices, we harvest, all kinds of applications. Which applications are sold on various markets, and you can be on a higher level, and you can go down a low level, and there is a need for a lot of junior capacity here. And I think a person that is really curious and not treat numbers only as numbers, but is really curious about what does that actually mean. I think that's a great opportunity. So it's not actually that hard to get into the industry, but I think that you might to be a really good analyst, you could start there, but then you maybe should leave the industry for a while and use those knowledges that you have got as an analyst, and then take that as a kind of a springboard into the real industry and work a while there and then come back. I think that's really ideal. And I think so in that way, I mean, not least here in London, where all the major analysts are here, really in energy and finance, and there are a lot of open positions, and we as companies are always looking for good people to hire, and so I think that is definitely a way to get in there, but to be a star, I think you have to be out there.
Okay. And my last question is a lesson you've learned in the past that others could benefit from. Looking back at your ex-courses, what would you maybe change, having known what you know today?
Well, most probably changed a lot. Although
Yeah?
I'm happy where I am, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think it could have gone there faster or easier?
I think I was working for too long in the same country where I also studied and grew up in Sweden, and it took although I made some trips out in the world for studies and for work, I was quite old when I moved to London, and just to be working in another country makes you look at the world in a different way, and even better, of course, if you go really remote, far away. That's go to Asia, where in my industry, that's where everything is happening. So I think that's important. But just by leaving your own country, and you will see the world differently. I think that is so important. And I think as I was in communication, I thought everything was, so tied to my language. I didn't think I would be proficient enough in English or in any other language, so to conduct my work elsewhere, which was so stupid, really. So for young people, I think, even if you are in a metropolitan like London or New York or Paris or whatever, you should leave for a while at least, and because that will be very different. When I look back many times, and I have a lot of customers, of course, friends and others that are in my hometown. I think they many times have just a far too local perspective than national perspective on things.
Very good advice, Hans-Erik. Yeah, because it's very important to see the world from many other perspectives than just your own culture and background. Yeah. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best in the battery industry. It's definitely a thriving one, and I'm sure many people want to know more about it. And if I may, I will also put your website on the podcast so that people can contact you directly. Some young talented minds.
Yeah, no, I'm always happy to chat with brilliant people or people that are just looking to learn more about the industry. It's a very exciting industry. It will, there will be a lot of different kind of roles, and I just want to emphasize that almost, you can come from almost anywhere because it's such a diverse area in a sense. Maybe not to design the next battery. Then it's good if you have some knowledge in physics and chemistry. But everything that really relates to the business and how to use it and whatever that can be, that can enable, you can come from everywhere, I would say, which is really exciting.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks a lot. And
Thank you for having me. That's great.
Pleasure. Do you want to share your profession with others? I would be honored to have you as my guest. Please reach out to me at jobtalespodcast@gmail.com.